What up? We're live. It's the Build Series. I'm Kevin Kenny, and we're about to be joined on stage by a group of gentlemen who have scored 7 #1 singles at country radio. Their music has been streamed over 1 billion with a B times, and they're nice enough to stop by today and chat about their self-titled album that's due your way this fall. Please, let's make it loud for a moment for Old Dominion. I can tell we have like we always have great fans here, but we have real fans in attendance today for you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That wasn't always a thing for us to have real fans.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny is like, I know it's not what the song's about necessarily, but one-man band, right? You guys just work so much better as a group than solo artists, right? If you think back to your sort of journey in this industry. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think it just, the sum of your parts are so much greater than individually?
None of us are good looking enough to be solo artists.
Yeah, that's one reason. Right? Can you hear? Is that on? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the combination of all of our musical influences, and Nashville is all about collaborating. I know me personally, like I've written some songs by myself, but as a songwriter, it's like I'm a much better collaborator than 2, 3, 4, 5 heads are definitely better than one. I think so. Right. Just whatever musical background and whatever DNA, however that gets mixed, is just what we end up sounding like.
Yeah, and it's so hard to sound unique. I think as a solo artist, it's just hard to do that unless you're just this crazy, like very determinated determined person, that has a very unique style. But we sound like we do because, like he said, of the chemistry that we have. So we kind of all automatically created this lane for ourselves just by being ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, we have, of course, I've alluded to it. We've got great Old Dominion fans here, but if we have a new Old Dominion fan watching at home right now, how did you form way back when? Was it a writing session? Was it something, in a bar? How did you actually become Old Dominion?
It was kind of like a slow evolution of a process. A lot of us were friends back home in Virginia. A couple of us grew up together. Some of us went to college together. And then we all kind of one by one ended up in Nashville, all kind of for the pursuit of music, but not necessarily. Some were songwriters. Some of us were trying to make it in the session world or being a hired player. And then I think it was probably for Matthew trying to pursue a songwriting deal was the first time that we all got on stage together, just as friends, to try to represent his music as best we could.
And then also as a recording, the first time we recorded was for that same reason. I had a publishing deal, and the publisher had seen us play and was like, why don't we bring your band in to record these songs and see what that sounds like. And so we all kind of were in the studio to record those songs I had been writing, and it was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, it felt really good. Yeah.
Trevor, you talk about Nashville being such a collaborative city. It's a story that I think is so quintessential Nashville. Like I think about Brooks and Dunn being on the show recently and talking about how they were kind of put together, both solo artists, and then of course the sum of those parts. Is that your favorite part about working in that town? Is it the collaboration?
For me, yeah, definitely. It's the collaboration, and it's just every day. I mean, there's so many, not just our band, but we have other co-writers we write with, and yeah, every day it's just inspiring. I mean, you show up to write. We've had publishing deals before the band worked, so we'd show up to write every day, and every day it's 1 or 2 different people. But just putting your minds together and just seeing what you can come up with. There's a magic to just showing up that day and going, we have nothing. I don't even have an idea, and then 4 hours later you walk out of there and you go, there's this new song that I love now that wasn't there 4 hours ago.
And that's like, it's good to have that collaborator too, because some days you may not feel like you have it.
Yeah.
But you're like, all right, I'm gonna go in there, and then they do something, and you're like, oh, and then that sparks it. Whereas if you were sitting alone and you didn't feel like you had it, you're not gonna spark yourself as easily as someone else who's being creative in front of you makes you want to jump in there.
Yeah, sometimes you're just like freestyle and mumbling a melody, and it's like, oh, did you just say such? You're like, no, I didn't say that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's actually been a kind of a hot topic on the show recently with our musical guests of how long do you have to sit with a song as an artist to know if it's done or not, to know if it's good or not. And I mean, you guys have famously, some of your biggest hits have come together in literally one day. Yeah. You just alluded to 4 hours there, but how does it typically work for you guys where a song is ready for the world to hear? Is it? Do you like to sit with it, maybe Jeff? Or
I was gonna say, I think it depends. For the five of us, it's across the board. I think some of us, you finish the recording process and you step away, and it's done. And
who's that? Let's name some names. So who thinks it's done first, and then who wants to sit with it the longest?
I think, I would think probably Wit is the one that seems kind of like detached the minute it's done, versus the far end of the spectrum would be Brad, who is never happy. Like, he'll go back. He would re-record the first album if he could.
Yeah.
He was actually talking about that the other day.
He was. It's sincere. He was with 100% sincerity. He was like, we should just fix the album. Oh, you know what, though? He was going to do it with Wit, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, Wit's definitely always wants to replay his part.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think what's kind of it's a bit of a throwback, at least in the modern music industry. But you guys, especially with you've done it on previous records, but I've heard it talked about a lot with the new record we're going to get this fall. Is you actually think about the live show when making the album, which used to be like commonplace with big rock bands or country bands, but it's less and less now, in music. Why is that way for you?
I mean, it's almost impossible for it not to work that way once you've been on the road. I don't think the first album was made that way because we wrote it and recorded it before we were on the road much. But when you do get a chance to be out there and get that immediate feedback, when you're in the writing room, it's just, as creative people, we can't help but sometimes go, we're going to be playing this in front of the audiences. How will this go over? Where would we put it in the set? We can't have 20 ballads, you got to keep the live show up. So it's another way to step away from the song and try to imagine whether it's going to work, whether that be a work on radio or work live.
Yeah. Matt, I was reading some article, and it was talking about you were like kind of reflecting, getting a little nostalgic about being a teenager, maybe in the garage, and just falling more and more and more in love with music. And it's such a special time in any of our lives, right? Discovering music as a teenager. And I've always felt, as a music fan, whether you make music or you just consume it, that there's always that one band or that one artist that sort of opens up Pandora's box, right? That really, like, you go from being just like, oh yeah, I listen to the radio, to like, no, I'm a music lover. Is there somebody that springs to mind when I talk about that?
I mean, as a teenager, I was a Soundgarden guy and a Pearl Jam guy. It was like that whole Seattle scene was just magical to me. Nirvana, all that was happening.
Why, though, about that? Was it because you're down in Virginia? Did it seem like almost like a world away?
It was a world away.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I didn't have any kind of like MTV or anything. I didn't have cable or anything growing up, and one of my buddies did, and I was walking through his living room one day, and the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit was on, and I stopped and was like, what is that? I don't know what that is, but it is different, and it really grabbed my attention, and so I just started digging into that whole Seattle scene, and it just really, I don't know, it was very raw and powerful and emotional, and it made me feel something,
It probably spoke directly to you.
Definitely,
Yeah.
I was definitely, pissed off teenager that wanted to scream, and play loud music. So that whole Seattle scene was the first thing that really made me really dig in. And then after that, like, my dad was really good at hearing those influences, the bands that he would hear and go like, that sounds like Led Zeppelin. You should listen to Led Zeppelin. And then I would dig in and start listening to stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. Were you guys as angsty as Matt?
No.
Still aren't.
Nope. Had a pretty good childhood and everything was good. I like the same bands though, weirdly.
Yeah.
The only dude with tattoos and
No, that was good.
Who was the artist or band that really just opened your mind up as a kid?
For me, I mean, there's a lot of different ones, which I think is what ultimately made me interested in creating music was, there was Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Was a huge one right off the bat, but then I got into rock, and it was Nirvana and Weezer and stuff like that. And then, I played in a rock band in high school, but then I was also into country, so I was like one of the few guys in my circle that actually listened to country music too. And I think at a young age, I started going, well, like, these are all so different. I was around Motown in Detroit, and all of these types of music are completely different, but like, what is the universal thing that, how come you can like music and melodies so much and they can be so different? What's the universal thread? And it just made me interested in figuring out how to create something new that is likable, and in just a universal way.
Yeah. Well, and authentic, right? I think that's the throughway with, we're lucky enough to have a lot of country artists stop by Build. And I think it's interesting when you have eclectic taste like you guys do, and then that all gets funneled into country, you somehow land as an artist in the world of country. But I think it is authenticity, right? Like we've had country artists on the show that love hip hop, right? So, okay, that's just storytelling, right?
Yeah,
One
yeah.
is trap drums, and well, now country kind of has trap drums sometimes.
Yeah.
in the song, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the magic of what's happening right now in music is that you don't find a lot of people that are exclusive to one genre of music.
Yeah.
So if you grab someone on our show and say, "Show me your playlists on whatever your streaming service is right now," a lot of times it will be hip hop, it'll be country, it'll be what's happening in pop and rock, and it's just kind of across the board. I think we're lucky that it's so easy to access any kind of music right now that you're just looking for good music, and it's not as limiting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Eminem, it's like that's as much an influence on my songwriting as any of the other people
Right.
mentioned, you know, just the rhyme schemes and the, weird rhymes and things like that. So it's, being able to take a piece of everything and figure out what's good in that and apply it to your music.
Oh, no, I think that's why this explosion over the past 5 to 10 years of country, right? Even like a market I talk about a lot on the show, like New York, right? I grew up here, and country was popular, but like now we have our own station here. You guys are doing MetLife. It's wild. But I think that a lot of fans that used to grow up on hip hop or pop when storytelling was king in those formats are now coming over to you guys as hip hop becomes more about vibe and maybe atmosphere but the story and the heart is still alive and well, and certainly country and what you guys do.
And that's always been what has made country music special. That's always been there. The storytelling element has always been what's the most important thing about country music, and why people gravitate towards it, I think, is that lyric and the care that goes into creating that lyric and telling that story. Even with other genres that do tell stories, they may not be as easily relatable, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like not everybody,
Has an Escalade limo.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
You knew where I was going. Yeah, it's like
Exactly.
trying to think of an
When you're at
example.
the 8th grade dance, you have the Escalade limo in
Totally,
your
you
mind.
want
I'll
it.
tell
You
you
want
that.
it. You want to dream for it, for sure.
Yeah. Where versus like a David Bowie song or something where it's like, I have no idea what these lyrics are. But sometimes you feel something in those songs too, even when the lyrics aren't easily translatable.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I wanted to ask you guys about sort of the approach to this album. It's been called Blind. You kind of went in blind, I've read. Why was that the approach?
Well, I
Sounds
mean,
scary.
Well, the long story is, I'll try to keep it somewhat short. But I got drunk one night, and I got a little mouthy about how we didn't have enough time to make the album that we would make because we were just touring so heavy. And the first album happened, it blew up, and then we were just touring, and then it was time to make the second album. We made it in 4 days. It was like, go make the album, keep touring. So it was super fast. And then at the end of the year, I was like, man, we just need more time to write and to go in the studio and really, be careful about the music that we make. And so our team, being amazing, made that happen. And then it was like upon us all of a sudden. We were like, oh, shit, we got to go in the studio. And it was like, it was right there in front of us, and we hadn't talked about, like my little like speech happened in December, and then the first studio session was in January. They booked it for us, and we were like, okay, you guys are going to the studio next week, and we hadn't talked about what we were going to record at all. So then we thought, okay, well, we've got all this time. There's no pressure. Let's just go in and see if we can write a song in the studio and then record it. And if we get something, cool. If not, we have thousands of songs that we can start looking at, but why don't we see if we can write one? So we did. We went in, we wrote Make It Sweet first day, recorded it that day. So the recording that you hear was, it's probably like the third time that we've ever played that song through. And then the next day, we did it again with another song that's on the album. It's called Hear You Now. So it's the same session. We just went in there, we wrote it, recorded it that day. And that was how it started. That sort of set the tone for the whole album to kind of to take a more relaxed pace and just really be careful and make sure we're enjoying it and make sure we're having fun playing this music and creating this music instead of just like, hurry up, you've got to get through this song because you got to do the next one, you know? So it was a really nice way to set the tone.
Would you guys say that since you guys broke big, you know, in the past few years, was the album recording process the first time you were able to sort of take that moment, as Matt just said, and sort of smell the roses of your success, smell the flowers, if you will, and kind of, because it's just life. Not that you're not enjoying yourself on the road, but it moves so fast, man. You know,
It does move fast. We have the advantage of being 5 longtime friends, and so I think that's maybe the thing that keeps us from missing a lot of moments is that you look with your friends and you're experiencing that special moment as a group.
One person will go. It takes one of
Yeah.
us to go like, dude, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then the rest of us go like, huh? Whoa, yeah. Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of people out there.
Yeah. So I think that saves us from having to, or from missing a lot of those moments, is that you've got 5 guys looking for them. But I think that the third album is at the point where we did have the security of the success of the first 2 to kind of lean back and be a little more thoughtful about what we're doing and a little less just reactionary.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You know, like I've heard like self-aware, vulnerable in terms of the lyricism on this album. Do you almost feel that like you've gotten so big in the past few years, you've gotten all these fans, and now it's time to sort of not introduce yourself, but like really get to know Old Dominion?
Yeah, I think there is definitely an element to that, and it's kind of building off of what Jeff said. It's a little bit more security, and we're comfortable. You know, like not that we're not worried about having radio hits, but I think when you make the first album, when we did, it was just about we got to write as many radio songs as we can, the catchiest songs we can. We got to get on the radio, and now after 2 albums of you know having some hits, we were able to just step back and go, it's okay to tap into all these other influences, tap into all these other sides of us lyrically that we've had that we haven't really shown. We don't feel the pressure to write the happy up-tempo song necessarily. We can show a little bit more vulnerability and you know, ballads and things like that.
So in that sense, I think it was actually just as much of an opportunity for us to get to know ourselves as it is for us to introduce people to who Old Dominion is. I think it was a discovery of who we are, actually. And that's why it's called Old Dominion, is because we figured out who we are on this album.
I get excited whenever I see the self-titled album. I'm like, oh, we're getting some stuff here. All right. We have a ton of fan questions, so let's try to get to these as soon as possible. The first is going to come from over here. What's your name?
Hi, Roxanne.
Hey.
Hey?
Hey. So last time you were on your Kenny Chesney tour for MetLife Stadium, I was at VIP, and I asked you guys what was your favorite song that you've written for this upcoming album so far. And Matt, you said Smooth Sailing.
Cool.
I want to know if that's still the answer, and if not, for each of you, which one is it now that you have released the track list and finished the album?
That's tough. I don't think it's the same answer, but it could be, you know, on any given day. Yeah, I mean, you know, the Smooth Sailing came from, that was a moment, you know, I probably said that. It was pretty, since we were on the Kenny tour, we wrote that song when we were on the Kenny tour, I think.
Oh, I just checked my calendar.
Yeah. And so,
It's in August.
We may have some questions for you. Ed.
yeah. Because I remember recording the vocals for that in a stadium somewhere for the demo. But, you know, that was in a moment where I was really feeling that song. You know, that was like a moment of true like frustration and also hope at the same time for me. So I was really feeling that song, and I still feel that song every time that we play it. There's a part that it gets to, and I get the chills every single time, which doesn't happen all the time with songs. But there's a lot on this album that does happen. So, I mean, I really love My Heart is a Bar. I love that so much. And there's some lines in there that I think are pretty daring. You know, it's a pretty dark song at times, but I think there are dark thoughts that people have, that everyone goes through, and not everyone is willing to say something like, you know, the true love is an illusion. You're being used, or you're using someone else. That's a shitty place to be, you know. But you know, I think it's an honor to be able to say something like that and have people go, oh man, I know exactly what that feels like. So right now, I'd say that's my favorite.
Oh, cool. Pass on down. What's your name?
Hey guys, I'm Michelle. Probably a little bit of a lighter note. Shane McAnally's.
Now that we've brought the room down.
I know Shane McAnally's produced all 3 of your guys' albums. And kind of honorary 6th man. How did you guys meet him, and what was your first impression of him?
I think I met him first just in a writing session. I was writing with him and our buddy Josh Osborne, who we also write a lot with. And it was back in the day. I mean, like, Shane didn't have any success. I think he had one song that had been on the radio at that point, but we were all just struggling to find a way to make it as songwriters. And he's one of those people that immediately, upon writing the first song and just hanging the first day, you click with, you go, like, there's a connection and a chemistry here. And right off the bat, my first impression was just he had such a great energy, and he also, I mean, if you know Shane, which you kind of get to know him just watching him on TV now, but he has this ability to shoot you down so hard, and you don't take offense to it, because, you know, you'll be writing and you're sitting there kind of stuck, and he'll go, that's terrible. That's not good. But you don't get mad. You go, it is terrible. Thank you for saying it's terrible. We could have sat here for an hour and written something terrible. So, yeah, he's just an immediate, instant filter.
Awesome, thanks.
Cool. Right on. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Harriet.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for the music. I'm fairly a new fan, so I haven't seen you live yet, but I'm looking forward to a New York date. Love from Becky in Illinois.
Yeah.
Well, so this is basically her question that she asked me to ask you. How do you decide on the set list? Is it a collaborative effort? Does somebody have a more?
Yeah, it
and
is.
also, before you answer,
Okay.
any plans for a stadium tour date soon?
Oh, well.
That would be very nice.
That would be very
Well, that's
nice,
a
right?
Garth shirt.
That is a-
I thought you were just repping the Irish, but okay, that's pretty cool. Right on.
I'd love to see you on that stadium tour.
We definitely want to see ourselves on the stadium tour. There's definitely that's a goal. That's a goal of ours for sure, to do the stadium tour. So, deciding the set list is sort of a group effort, and it usually starts at the beginning of the year in January. We kind of have rehearsals and we start to sit down and plan what we think a good show would be, and then we labor over it and run it a few times, make some changes, play it, and then we go play the first show, and then we change the whole thing because it just never works out the right way the first time. So it's an ever evolving thing, and it has a base, and then we'll get halfway through the year and we'll get bored, and somebody will be like, man, I don't want to play this like this anymore, and we'll go, okay, let's see how we can change it. And so it always changes, and now we've been talking a lot more about there's a lot of songs now, we're in a fortunate position that don't make it on the set list because we don't have enough time to play everything. So there are songs that get cut out, and we can do things now like start to take requests, and people yell things out, and we go, okay, let's play that. And that's, I think, where we would ultimately like to get to, is one of those bands that just like these bands that we talked about that publish their set list. It's completely different every night. We would love to get to a point where it's like they can't believe they played that song that night, so it's always changing.
How about Becky in Illinois send like representatives to New York to ask questions? That's pretty baller.
Yeah, right.
Where's the next question going to come from?
Hey, I'm Liam. I was wondering, when you guys first moved to Nashville, where did you guys think? Did you have a plan of where you might end up, I guess, and how did that change as time went on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think I moved there, thinking I wanted to be an artist and be a solo artist. I had no idea what that means. You just move to Nashville and go, I'm gonna do country music, But writing was where it started for me. And then, a couple years in, I got to the point where, like, there's so much competition, and I sort of fell in love with the writing process and sort of forgot the artist process. So at that point, I never planned on this being a thing. It was more about, I just want to write the greatest songs I can write and find my crew. And so all of this was just, just icing on the cake for sure.
Yeah, I think that's true probably for all 5 of us, is that none of us moved to Nashville thinking that the artist side of the business would be something we'd have access to. I think we all were excited to make music and be part of the Nashville scene, but I don't think any of us thought that the artist part would work.
Yeah, I met a songwriter. His name's Daryl Scott, and he's an incredible artist and songwriter. And he he wrote some songs for like Travis Tritt and the Dixie Chicks, and I met him before I moved to Nashville. I saw him like play like a little workshop, and I asked him afterwards, what did he think about moving to Nashville? And I said, because I'm considering doing it. And he said, if you want to go down there and be a star, then don't do it. But if you want to go down there and be, surrounded by the best songwriters in the world and the best musicians in the world and learn from them and be inspired by them and try to create something off of that inspiration, then by all means you should do it. And so I listened to that, and I tell myself that still to this day, that I just want to learn and try and be better. And so I feel like I did that, and I feel like I'm still trying to do that. So that was my goal, and I feel like I carried through with that goal.
Great question. All right, time for one final one.
Hi, I'm Jules. I was wondering if you would collab with anyone, who would you want to collab with?
That's a question we get often, and there's no one answer. It's we just love music, and I think we love, like we've been talking this whole time about all the different genres that we listen to, and it's across the board. Brad always says that he would love to play with Lenny Kravitz. He just really loved Lenny Kravitz growing up, and was inspired by him. And then there's bands like like Pearl Jam that we would love to do something with. There's people like Springsteen that we would love to do something. There's also like
The Eagles.
There's all kinds of people that we would love. John Mayer would be amazing. And then there's a lot of like up and coming young people that are out there that hopefully will look at us and want to do something with us at some point too. So we would love to get into more of that world, no matter whatever presents itself. There is sometimes some pressure for that, because that seems to be a thing these days, that everyone wants to collaborate, and so the only thing that we say is that we just don't want it to be forced, and we want that to happen naturally, and it might be a slower road to get to that collaboration, but hopefully when we do make some sort of relationship and the collaboration does come out of it, it will come across as authentic, and that way be a lot better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jules. So she's a Build audience veteran.
Yeah.
And she's also a stan of a particular country duo. Do you want to say who you want to see them collab with?
Sure.
Sorry. Okay. So, I'm like a huge fan of Dan and Shay. Right. Shay recently just announced he's having a second child, so I'm really proud of him. But yeah, I was just, I'm a really big fan of them.
We are big fans of them too. Shay,
that'd be awesome.
Shay sends us the most hilarious text messages. Once in a blue moon, we get hilarious text messages from Shay.
I wish we could show them right now.
Yeah, we can't show you them right now, but they are funny.
Awesome. All right. Great job. High five. Nice work. All right. They're telling me we're out of time, guys, but thank you so much. Again, the record October 25th?
Yes.
Beautiful. Just in time for Halloween. Old Dominion, self-titled record. Is there a Halloween joke?
I hope somebody gives our album out for Halloween.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Somebody should go as you guys as like a couch. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Just have some see, there you go. A little brainstorm. Also, shout out to I'm shocked at how well composed these fans are. They're like feet from you guys. If I was like in front of my favorite band, I'd be like, you guys were articulate. All right. Yeah. No one wants to hear about that. Guys, Old Dominion, everybody.
Thank you.